And last but not least, we have our prospect watch. This
Yep.
time is going to be a little bit different. And going forward will be a little bit different because we're getting into the crunch time of the NFL draft.
He caught me, guys. He said, Tom, I do not want you to talk about any of these prospects. I want me to break them down and you add some little tidbits.
Well, okay. So what happened was you're a busy man. I'm not that busy. Okay. I can
Yeah,
watch. I mean, I'm busy, but not as busy as I used to be. So now
sure.
I can watch film, more often. And if I felt like it would just be easier to get all these prospects in, because there's quite a bit more prospects I do want to talk about before draft night, just because of some guys that I think the Lions could go after.
Right.
And really, we did this, or I did this, because I wanted to be more in touch with the draft prospects that we do draft, or other teams draft
Yeah.
in the top guys. But today we have Trevon Walker versus Kayvon Thibodeaux.
Yep.
This one is going to be huge because this is the talk of the town right now.
Yeah.
At number 2, who do we want? Well, who should we start with, Tom?
Let's talk about Walker first because I think you have significantly more interest in him than I do.
Okay, let me preface this, right? I've been playing devil's advocate for the past week on why teams would want Trevon Walker over Kayvon. I don't know which one I want more.
Okay.
The prospect breakdowns, I think you'll notice that it is actually very close in my mind. It's just preference of the type of player that you want, right? And I don't know what I want, and I don't know what the Lions would want. It's really, really tough position here. But starting off with Trevon Walker, okay. So the pros for him are the obvious. He's big, strong, fast, versatile. He's 6'5", 276 pounds. He can play anywhere from 3 tech to wide 9. He can drop into coverage. I don't know if he'll do that much in the NFL, but the Lions have showed that they like to do that with their outside linebackers slash edge players. But he wasn't great at it, but that's just something he can do with his athleticism. He showed that he's capable. And then he's long arms and legs. He has a good build for the position. Like I said, he's 6'5", 276, but when you look at him, you wouldn't think that. He looks similar to Kayvon. He's a little bit thicker, but he looks a lot similar. And I think the difference is his that bottom half is a lot thicker and bigger than Kayvon's. And I think that's why you see the difference in the against the run and stuff. And a little bit of the athleticism stuff, because Trevon Walker surprisingly is actually a little bit better of an athlete than Kayvon Thibodeaux is.
Yeah.
Even at his size, I do believe Trevon still ran a faster 40. Am I wrong?
No, I mean Trevon Walker is probably the most athletic defensive and slash outside linebacker in this draft.
Yeah.
He's very, very athletic.
Yeah. And with that said, I mean, he fights through blocks well. He's got a solid bull rush. And this is something I wanted to talk about, earlier when you mentioned he has no pass rush moves. He has your basics. Okay. He's got your bull rush. He's got a little bit of a push pull, and he's got a little bit of his chop, but it's not great.
So the basic, right?
Right.
And so
exactly.
Like in college, you can get away with that.
Right.
In the pros, you can get eaten alive.
Right.
Especially.
Well, I don't know if you're that big and strong. I mean, obviously you want him to work on it, but I personally think, and this is a big thing for me and Kayvon, which I wanted to say earlier, but I didn't. The big difference for me with him and Kayvon is I would almost take a guy that all you have to do is give him pass rush moves and then he's elite, than a guy that you have to teach how to stop the run, and you have to teach him how to split double teams, and you have to teach him how, what I mean? There's a lot of stuff you'd have to teach Kayvon. He's a great pass rusher, don't get me wrong, but I would almost rather have the guy that's going to come out the gates better at everything else right now, and then have to work his way up to be a pass rusher.
Well, all right, you don't. Outside linebacker is weird in the fact that you don't need to be a good one stopper anymore.
I disagree.
If you want to be elite of elite, if you want to be like Khalil Mack, you can. But
if you want to play more than 60% of snaps in the NFL, you have to be a good run stopper.
There's players like Shaq Barrett who cannot stop the run whatsoever.
He's better than Kayvon Thibodeaux.
Yeah, but he's also
he's got to be good. That's probably the best run stopping defense ever.
I feel like a lot of it needs to do with Vela.
Well, yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying statistically, it's the best run stopping defense ever for the last 2 seasons.
But like, my point is that Shaq Barrett hasn't been. Maybe it's gotten better,
Right.
and like maybe it's something that he's improved on. But he's never been known as a good run stopper in his NFL career, and so like, and he's making a significant amount of money. They also have another guy on the defense, Jason Pierre-Paul, who also is now a real good run stopper. So like, I think that unfortunately, outside linebackers a lot like the NBA, where if you just put the sack numbers up, then you're just gonna get paid. And if you are going to be like an absolute all pro NFL outside linebacker like a Khalil Mack, then yes, run stopping is a huge issue. But you
that's
don't
my
need to
thing.
be good for
Right.
if run stopping to be a successful NFL player.
Well, that's my problem. At number 2 overall, I want a guy who's more likely to be the Khalil Mack than a guy who's
for sure.
got the smaller lower floor. Exactly. But where was I at? So with Trevon Walker, he's got a solid bull rush. He doesn't get pushed around. And that's the big difference between him and Kayvon. I feel like Kayvon gets pushed around quite a bit. And then he doesn't get pushed around. He anchors in the run game well. He's got a solid push-pull moves. He feels the play really well. He gets down the line well. And when I say down the line, as a defensive end, okay, especially Trevon Walker, he's not the guy that they go get the quarterback. He's the guy that has a specific job. So as a defensive lineman, when you are told your job this week is the running back, one of the main things that you have to do when you don't get blocked, specifically when you're unblocked, is immediately work your way down the line, like a straight line down the line of scrimmage. Does that make sense? To get to the running back. And that's one of the biggest things that you don't really see out of these younger guys, because I played the position myself, and it's something you forget. You just forget consistently, because when you're unblocked, you just want to go. You just want to get to the quarterback or wherever. But he does that very well. He fights off doubles and chips very well. He's very good against the run. He's got really good speed to power, which is something you really like to see. He doesn't have the elite hands and all that you see out of an Aiden Hutchinson this year. But I feel like he could work his way up there. He collapses the pocket well. He doesn't finish well. That's the real problem, is he's got some issues with finishing, and I think that has a lot to do with his hands, and just being a little raw at the position as a pass rusher in general. He's got some issues, finishing as well. And then he dropped into coverage sometimes. He's doubled all the time. And as a guy that is on a defensive line like him, when you're doubled more often than they are, that's saying something. Like, he was doubled constantly. And when you got Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt right next to you, that's saying something. But with his cons, okay, obviously he needs to work on a lot of his pass rush moves. He uses his shoulders way too much in his pass rush, which is a big issue for me, because that's one of the big things. The first thing you're taught as a pass rusher is to get your hands on them, and when your immediate thing is to kind of just shoulder your way into a guy, it doesn't look very good, especially on film when you're trying to see how the guy's good at pass rushing, and then he's just kind of laying on a guy. It's like, all right. And then he had a specific job, so it's hard to evaluate fully based on like what you would want him to do in your scheme. And then he's not super bendy. He's not, your, like we've talked about, he's not your elite pass rusher right out of the gate. He doesn't have the elite get off, but at the same time, a lot of the times he's asked to be a QB spy, or QB contain, or he's supposed to get to the running back, whatever it is, he's got a job. So it makes it a little tougher. He stops his feet too often for me at times. It feels like in pass rushing specifically, he'll get a guy to a good point, and then he'll kind of just stop his feet, and then he gets stopped. And then, that's when he collapses the pocket, but doesn't finish a lot of the time. And then he doesn't get the pressures you'd want at the number 2 overall pick. He over pursues at times, needs to finish more, and doesn't have the sacks. And with all of that said, I still have him as an A- player, because I feel like he could step in and be a very, very good player. And like we talked about before, I think his absolute floor is Trey Flowers. And I know that's like, oh wow, taking Trey Flowers at number 2, but we're talking about Trey Flowers that can run a 40 and 4.5. I mean, like, it's not elite player talent, but it's a guy that, I mean, Trey Flowers got 18.5 million on the open market, and we weren't the only team that was going to give it to him. So I know he got picked a little later, but I more say that because of the play style, because he'll be more of a run stopper. He'll probably have like 7 to 9 sacks a year, and he'll be good all around.
So here's my thing: is that let's just say that these two, Thibodeaux and Walker, develop the same way that we see him now.
Okay.
Where Walker is more of your one-stopping defensive lineman. Thibodeaux has more of your power rushing moves, speed rushing moves. It's more of a pass rusher. Doesn't give of his effort 100% of the time, but doesn't stop the run at all. Don't you think that like Thibodeaux's still the better pick at 2? Because he
I'll
does
answer
stuff.
that. I'll answer that after I do Kayvon's, because that's kind of like what I was gonna go at the end here. I was gonna have a little like a scenario thing at the end, so that'll be one of them. But with the last thing I have for Trevon Walker, my pro comp for him is a more athletic Cameron Jordan, or a bigger, or I'm not a bigger version of Josh Allen or a Rashawn Gary type. I feel like he's, got that potential to be great, but he's more likely kind of your top 15 pass rusher type, if that's kind of where you'd like him to be. And then Kayvon Thibodeaux is very similar. I have the same grade on them. They're both an A- with A+ potential. So it's really tough. But my pros for Kayvon is he's big. He's got good length. Like, he's 6'5", 250. So he's about 25-ish pounds less than Trevon Walker. He's big, got good length, good burst. He's a prototypical pass rusher, long arms, big, thick arms. He's kind of got a smaller lower body, but that helps him with his get off and, being a little bit more bendy. He's got solid hands. He's not elite yet, but he's solid. He's definitely better than Trevon Walker by quite a bit. He's got a decent repertoire of moves. He's a good athlete. He's versatile. He can play the 5 tech all the way down to the wide 9. I wouldn't put him at the 5 in the NFL. I would just leave him between the 7 and the wide 9, just because I don't think he can stop the run at all. At the 5 tech specifically, and I feel like he'd have a lot of issues with tackles chipping him, or being double teamed, or just being washed down often, because that was something I saw on tape a lot with him. He gets washed down a lot by these tight ends. And then he finishes his sacks well, which is something you don't see with Trevon Walker. Usually when Kayvon Thibodeaux gets a pressure, he's hitting the quarterback, or at least getting close to him, or getting a sack.
Yeah.
He's got good quick hands and dip move. He's got a good chop. He's got a solid arsenal. He's got solid recovery. When he gets knocked down or he gets kind of pushed off balance, he can recover pretty well. He collapses the pocket well. He's got a good speed rush. He goes to the outside shoulder really well, which is something we didn't see with Trevon Walker. Kind of the opposite, where Trevon kind of shoulders guys, where Kayvon knows, okay, I got to get my left hand on your outside shoulder and try to kind of spin you around so that I can throw you to the side when I need to. And then he's got a very good burst, and very good get off, like I said. And then his cons, he does need some work with his hands. Not nearly as much work as Trevon Walker, but still he needs some to be that elite, top tier pass rusher. His bull rush needs a lot of work, and this is the difference between him and Trevon Walker. Trevon Walker's bull rush is very good, and that's the thing is, if he's got a few pass rush moves, his bull rush is definitely his best one.
Thibodeaux is more of a speed rusher. I agree.
Definitely. And I mean, I'm not like hating him for it, but that's something you definitely want him to have a little bit more.
But I also think that like size takes count for that,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
That's what I was going with the difference between their lower body, is I think that's where a lot of that comes from for Walker. He's got
yeah.
that extra 25 pounds, and if you look at their upper body, it doesn't look very different. It's the
Do
lower
you,
body.
do you think Walker being 25 pounds up hurts his chances playing linebacker?
No,
Really?
because I mean he's just as fast and athletic.
Yeah,
And I feel like
I
if
guess that's true.
anything, it kind of helps him because like where you said earlier, um, like you said, oh well, these outside linebackers don't need to be able to stop the run because they're more pass rushers. Well, you're not technically wrong, but as an elite pass rusher, like as a guy you take at 2 or a guy you're paying $20 million a year, he's got to play over 75% of the snaps,
Oh
70%
yeah,
at least. Well, if you can't stop the run, you ain't playing more than 60% of the snaps, because I mean in today's NFL it's a 60-40 game, 60% pass, 40% run, you know. Well, probably more like 65, well 70-30 more like. But I feel like it's one of those things where like if you're taking a guy like Kayvon, I feel like he's more of a or what, not a commodity, a convenience item. Whereas Trevon Walker's more of like, this guy's a building block. He can play all these different positions. But I'll get to that later.
okay.
Where was I? So he gets pushed around way too often for me, in the run specifically, but a lot of the times in the passing game too, once he gets blocked, he's blocked. Um, he has a lot of issues fighting off doubles, which I know everybody's gonna be like, well, he's not gonna get doubled from the 5 tech in the NFL. Yeah, but he could get doubled in the NFL at the 7 tech by tight ends and tight tackles. And guess what? George Kittle is basically a college tackle. Okay, let's be honest. I mean, George Kittle is a freaking monster. And if he gets doubled by George Kittle in whatever tackle, he's screwed. And I know you're saying most defensive linemen would be, or linebackers would be, but when you're taking a guy at number 2, you don't want him to be most defensive linemen. You just don't. You want him to be that step above. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But and then he doesn't anchor well in the run. He kind of gets, like I said, he gets pushed around too well. He doesn't get off blocks well. He's not dominant enough to me in any way, when he's singled or versus lesser comp. Even as a pass rusher, he just doesn't look dominant. He looks very good, don't get me wrong, but when you watch him, he's not a Chase Young or a Bosa or, even an Aiden Hutchinson. Like you watch him
Right.
and he's like, okay, this guy's pretty good. He's got the tools. He needs some work, but you'd probably take him, 5, 6, 7, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
And then what doesn't have the sacks, which with all the talk about how Kayvon's such a great pass rusher, you'd think he'd be having 16 sacks a season. No, no. Him and Trevon Walker's sack numbers are very similar. You'd be surprised.
Didn't Thibodeaux have more pressures though? Didn't Thibodeaux
Oh
like
yeah,
lead the FBS in pressures?
I'm not completely sure about that. That might be true. From I haven't looked at those numbers exactly. But from what I saw in terms of the other numbers that I saw, they weren't too far off. And for a guy that kind of, your one job is to rush the passer, it's kind of, you're a little worried.
So like I don't know. I feel like if you're a pass rusher, your job is not to get sacks. It's to pressure the ball. And if he's doing that,
Yeah, yeah,
your job is done. And
I
I don't.
guess.
That's like that's why Trey Flowers got 70 million, right? It's because Trey Flowers never got sacks, but he pressured the ball every single down
Right.
they
So
played.
here's the thing. If we're talking about Trevon Walker's absolute floor as Trey Flowers, you're saying pressures are the most important thing. He's
Right.
elite stopping the run. That sounds like a great player.
Yeah. The only difference is that Trey Flowers got picked in the 5th round,
Right, right, right.
whereas we're
Where
talking about
I mean, you could say that about anybody though. You could say, I mean, Tom Brady got picked in the 6th round, or Antonio Brown got picked in the 6th round,
yeah.
or it's one of those things that you compare him to the player. Well, if everybody knew Trey Flowers was going to be that good, they wouldn't have picked him in the 5th round. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So it's one of those things that's like, yeah, you can say that, but he wasn't that good when he got picked, so that's why he got got
Yeah.
all the money later on. But and then so he doesn't have the sacks. He gets blocked by tight ends way too much, in my opinion. He doesn't set the edge well. He's too reactionary, as in he's just like he sees it and goes. Like it's not like a lot of the time, and a lot of the times he's wrong. So that's why it's an issue.
Yeah.
And then he stops his feet versus the run too often. Like he'll kind of just give up on the play. And then like I said, his grade for me is an A- with A+ potential. The difference is he's got like a C floor. Like he could not be he could be okay in the NFL. He could be not great. Whereas my comp for him is Khalil Mack. That's his absolute ceiling, but his absolute floor is
It's a
beyond.
huge. That's a huge ceiling.
I know, but that's if he gets his run game down. Because when you watch the tape, he's got all the quick twitchiness, he's got all that stuff, but he's missing a lot of key components to it. Where that's his absolute ceiling. Whereas Trevon Walker's absolute ceiling is, I don't want to say this, but it's like an Aaron Donald type of player. We're talking like dominant, like dude, bro. Yeah, I'm not saying he's going to be Aaron Donald level, but we're talking about like a Bosa. We're talking like next level. Yeah, I know you're looking at me crazy, but all he needs is pass rush moves, bro. What are we talking about here? All he's got to do is be able to get metal in his hands.
The only reason why I refute that is that Thibodeaux, like I feel like you can make a case for Thibodeaux being a killer man because he's been around the first overall pick for this entire year.
Okay, but you could say the same thing about Joe Burrow.
Was like a second round pick in the beginning of the year.
And Joe Burrow was undrafted at the beginning of the year that year, and he ended up being the first overall pick and probably the best rookie quarterback in the last 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. But like,
you know what I mean? It's one of those things where I feel like people are too.
Joe Burrow made a name for himself like throughout the season. I feel like Walker
was on the best defense in college football, and he was the one guy on that team that got doubled the most, from what I saw. And he was the only guy on that defensive line that was told, this is your job. This is what you have to do to make this work. And in my opinion, him being so athletic that he could have definitely done more, but they told him this is what you have to do, to me means he was the only guy on that team or on that D line that was like intellectual enough to be able to process all of that stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just don't love a player that like is now in the top 3 in the last like week or two.
Right.
Like Walker was a.
I don't disagree with you there.
14 pick.
Right.
Before the last 2 weeks. And
now here's the thing. We're hearing this from the media though. Like this is all stuff from the media. NFL teams could have had him as a top 5 pick for 5 months. We have no idea. It's just the media finally heard about it and it's like, oh, this Trevon Walker guy could be pick number 1. Because if you're telling me that it couldn't have come out of nowhere, you know what I mean? Because it's not like he did something in the national championship game that made you go, wow, Trevon Walker is the next up big deal. You know what I mean? It's not like he did something in a game that you're just like, okay, holy shit. They knew this before, and then the media just caught wind of it. And now he's somehow could be the number 1 pick. I don't think that came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? I feel like it was always a possibility.
Yeah.
Because he's a guy that doesn't wow. So me and you wouldn't necessarily pick up on that because we just watch the college football games in its entirety. You know what I mean? Like we don't watch it and go, okay, I'm going to watch number 44 for this whole game to see how good he is. You know what I mean?
So I also find this interesting. You picked Aaron Donald as the comp for Walker.
Well,
and you picked the absolute, if he exceeds comp, right? Like the most, if he excels, that's what he's going to be.
Right.
And then Khalil Mack for Thibodeaux. I want to know what your comp for Hutchinson is because those are probably the 2 best defensive linemen in the NFL.
Well,
right now
I
is
don't know about that.
Mac and Donald. So
Well, here's my thing. Okay, so Aiden Hutchinson, I haven't done my deep dive on him 100% yet, but he's a Nick Bosa type player to me. Like he might not be on that level of prospect yet, quite yet, but that's
yeah,
his ceiling. His ceiling is
okay,
like a
okay.
Nick Bosa type, elite pass rusher that can also stop the run pretty well. And this is another thing for me. Kayvon, his more realistic comp would be like a Shaquille Barrett. Like that's what I would see more realistically. Like that's what teams are drafting him as. Does that make sense? Like they're not
Yeah,
drafting him to be Khalil Mack. They're drafting him to be Shaquille Barrett.
absolutely,
You
I
know what I
agree.
mean? So in Trevon Walker, the same thing. They're drafting him to be a step up from Cameron Jordan. And if he's that, that's awesome. I mean, Cam Jordan is a great player. He's a 13 to 16 plus sack a year guy, as well as being
Sure.
very good against the run. You know what I mean? And I think that's what Trevon Walker could be. To my floor comp for Kayvon is Deion Jordan, though. I think he has very high bust potential. And that's my problem with Kayvon is I think his bust potential is a lot higher than Trevon Walker's because if Kayvon busts, it's most likely that he is not good at all. Like if he busts, it's like a Deion Jordan, Alden Smith type where I mean, maybe not Alden Smith because he was good. He had some off the
He
field
was
stuff.
very good, yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably more of like uh, you know,
But it
just
also
over
like kind of
busts.
depends on what trade flowers you're talking about.
I'm
Because if you're talking
talking,
about like the New England Patriots floor, then yeah, you're getting a good guy. But if
yeah.
you're talking about like the Detroit Lions trade flowers, that guy is maybe not even worth a contract. Like trade
Right.
flowers was really bad with
I
Detroit
don't think he
Lions.
was really bad. I just think he was overpaid, so it made him look bad. I think what my the Trey Flowers comp is New England Trey Flowers because that was
Okay.
his prime, and that's what I'm saying is like I feel like that's Trevon's floor, and I feel like he's more of a safe pick, and that's why you would see teams like Detroit where we can't afford to miss on this pick. Even if we miss on this pick, okay, we're talking a decent player at least, Whereas Kayvon, I
That's
could see fully busting.
that's why I think you guys should actually consider Tucker.
Nope.
I think I if you guys pick a Chem or if you guys pick New York, you guys have probably the best offensive line
Nope.
in the NFL for years.
Nope. I'm not doing it. If I'm the Lions, there is 0% chance I take tackle at 2. I just won't do it.
I think they're the safest players and the best players available
Right, but we're gonna play them at guard. You're not taking a guard at number
for the
2.
first couple of years.
Yeah, but you don't in the NFL, like how do I say it? This ain't Madden. You can't just move dudes around all over and over and over. Be like, oh, to this week you're gonna play right guard. Next week you're gonna play left tackle. Next week you're gonna play or year even. You can't go this year you're gonna play right tackle. Next year you're gonna play left. Next year we're gonna move you to right guard or vice versa. That's just not how that works. Like usually
Right.
guys when they come in, their first or second year they are solidified in their position. Like
Didn't the Lions move Sewer like three
yeah,
times though?
no, we moved him. We moved him. Technically, we moved him one time because he started out at left because Decker was hurt, and then we moved him back to right. So technically, he was always our right tackle, and then we had to move him to left. So technically, we didn't move him twice. But the same thing with Frank Ragnow. I mean, we drafted him, and we already had a center, so we played him at left guard for year 1, and then he moved to
Yeah.
center. But that was in the 20th overall selection.
I mean, yeah, sure, but like,
And we had a need at tackle with Sewell. All we need right now at offensive line is a right guard, and we already have one. He's just not elite. Like that's the thing. We don't need to be spending on offensive linemen at number 2. Like there is actually negative percent chance in my brain that we take an offensive lineman in the first round at all. Like I just don't see that coming at all. Because
okay,
especially with the positional value, there's some guys you could get the 4th, 5th round that are probably better than what you have, and you don't have to spend on
okay,
a bunch.
I get that. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just like again, this draft is so weak to me that
Mm-hmm. You know,
I disagree that Walker's floor is Trey Flowers. I think his floor is a lot worse than that.
yeah,
Like I could actually see him being kind of like a Deion Jordan
I don't see
floor,
that.
where he's just like out of the NFL.
He's too good of an athlete, and he is more ready than Kayvon is right now to step in the NFL and be a very good player.
I don't know. So like the thing that I don't like about Walker is that all he is potential, in my opinion.
I don't think so. I think all Kayvon is potential. I think it's the exact opposite.
I think both of them are all
right.
potential.
Well,
Don't get me wrong.
My point with that is that right now, today, I believe Trevon Walker is the better football player.
I absolutely agree.
And that to me means you're drafting Kayvon more for potential than you would at Walker.
Correct. I would say that if right now, if I was a general manager, I would pick Walker over Thibodeaux. I 100% agree with you.
Agreed.
I just don't know if I would draft either of them.
Right. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there, because it is a tough pick. And like we said before, the number one thing is a trade down. If you can't get a trade down, though, you're kind of in a sticky situation like the Jeff Okudah stuff, where, we wanted to trade down and we couldn't, and we had to take Okudah. It didn't work out. It was the player we wanted, but we took him a little too early. This draft's a little different, though, because there's not guys that we're passing on necessarily, other than maybe a Kyle Hamilton or a Malik Willis.
You're passing 2 generational tacklers.
You and these tackles, man, it's killing me.
I'm just saying. Okay, so like, okay,
that's not happening.
let's be honest. One of them might turn out to be like Luke Jocker. One might also turn out to be Eric Fisher. But I'm just saying, like,
I get what you mean. It's just, as a Lions fan and from the Lions perspective, it ain't happening. Like,
I 100% agree. I don't think they're the picks. I just think that they're the safest picks.
The Detroit Lions are taking Evan Neal at number 2. You heard it here, Carolina. You heard it here first. Everybody, we're taking offensive linemen. Come get the number 2 pick so you can get them. All right. Works for me.
No, like, I 100% agree with you. I'm just saying the safest picks.
Yeah.
If you guys actually going best player available, would need to be tackled, in my opinion.
I think it would be different if, number one, we didn't just give Taylor Decker a huge deal, because if we could trade him away and get maybe a late first or like a second round pick, then I think we would be in for it, because then we would have 2 bookend tackles that we just drafted back-to-back years. But the problem is we're tied to Taylor Decker for the next 3 seasons. We cannot get rid of him. No. So we would be drafting a right guard at number 2.
Your argument completely makes sense, and I 100% agree with that.
Right.
Again, it's just, if I'm saying who's the safest pick at number 2, if Indian's gone, it's got to be one of the attackers.
No, I don't disagree.
Because I don't trade out.
Yeah, they probably are the safest pick in terms of talent. You know, not in terms of fit, but in terms of talent, they are the safest pick.
Right.
Bust potential. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I said before, the Lions can't really afford to bust on this pick, but we do have a lot of different, possibilities that we could go with, because, Malik Willis is a possibility. And at this point, I wouldn't hate it, because then it's like, well, at least you get a year to see. You got to wait a year to see if he's going to suck or not, at least,
Right. And like, it's like banking on your future. Like, quarterback is the most pivotal position on the NFL roster. And I don't know. I find that, like, if you guys get a quarterback, the NFL season is exciting, because you want to see that quarterback play, right? Like, and so even if he is a bust, then, like, that sucks, and it sets you back so many years. But I don't know. To me, that's better, worth the excitement watching than them taking another guy that's maybe a Jeff Okudah.
Right. Well, I don't know. It's so tough, because I would rather, at this point, like, if there's no trade down, I would rather just take one of the edges and move on, because then it's almost like, okay, we get to see what we got next year, and then if he's not good, we have 2 more first round picks next year.
The only thing that I don't want to see the Lions do is draft another Jeff Okudah.
Agreed.
And so that's what kind of scares me about Thibodeaux and Walker, is that it's kind of the same thing that we heard about Okudah. Okudah coming in the draft was all about potential. He could be at potential number 1. And yes, injuries has played a part in why he is
he wasn't very
player.
good on field. I mean, he was decent, but he wasn't great. And I mean, to be honest, though, I didn't love the pick of Okudah because he didn't show me what I think he needed to be that pick. And I mean, I guess you could say I'm right so far, but I'm kind of the opposite with Walker, where it's he shows me enough. It's just, can he learn what he needs to learn? You know, whereas Jeff Okudah, it was Jeff Okudah is not the athlete that you think he is or that you would want at that position at that draft pick. And I don't know, he just wasn't as clean as everybody thought. He wasn't as, like, if you're going to pick a corner at number 3, it better be Jalen damn fucking Ramsey. It better be Jalen Ramsey. You know what I mean? Like, if you're picking a corner that early, he better be locked down top 10 corner from the moment he steps on that field. If not, you just screwed up. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. If I was a betting man, I would bet that Walker is the pick at number 2.
Agreed.
But I wouldn't necessarily like it if I was a Lions fan.
I wouldn't,
because I would want to trade down.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it or love it. It would be one of those, okay, we'll see. You know, it's just at this point, as a Lions fan, that's kind of where you're at anyway with the whole team. You know, so it's not the worst position. You just really like there to be more of a obvious choice here at number 2. You know, so that kind of is tough. But that's all we got for this episode. We appreciate Tom for coming by as usual. And we appreciate you guys for watching. I don't usually say this, but go ahead and like, subscribe, drop some comments, do your thing, share this some bitch, get this everywhere. Let's have some fun with it. Again, stay tuned for Friday. We'll have that chaotic mock draft. I would not be surprised if every single pick gets traded. Not really going to happen, but it could. But so yeah, stay tuned for that, and we will see you on the next one. And as always, thank you, Tom, for coming on.
No worries. Thank you.
All right.
Bye, guys.
See ya.